I enjoyed your first inquiry, and because you're year two, you have two inquiries to do, and so your second one, what did you select?
Um, I focused mainly on the environment and facilitating an even more intimate atmosphere. You know, it's kind of something that I almost took for granted. I felt that, my rapport and relationship with the students was, provided that safe environment, which I think it does. But I realize now that if I incorporate that awareness into my lesson plan development, that I can build on that, that feeling, that cohesive unit even more than we already have. So.
Like a team, more of a team?
Yeah, far more of a team idea, and a sense of safety and security amongst each other, a little community within the classroom.
What was the reason you selected that one?
I selected that one because, obviously the ITQ Says program that you've piloted with us has encouraged the students to get deeper in touch with their own experiences, emotions, and feelings, and be able to channel and funnel those into academic writing. And I've seen some pretty dramatic and amazing stories shared, and the responses yielded from the class were even more impressive. So I figured we can build on this, put it together, and make an extremely safe, trusting, and productive classroom environment at the same time.
And being more intentional about it now. You're
Being
doing it
far more
naturally, but
cognizant
now
as
being,
doing it,
yes. And so what are some of the things that you're looking at that you see that you would like to improve on, and how you're creating that community in your class?
I think, like I was saying, taking that consciously into lesson plan development, providing more interactive activities, group work, not for the sake of just accomplishing a task, but group work for the sake of forging a stronger relationship, amongst themselves. So I've really been looking at appealing to all the learning modalities versus just the auditory, visual learners, So.
And what standard will that fall into that you're...
Specifically, we're looking at CSTP element 2.1, which is promoting social development and responsibility within a caring community where each student is treated fairly and respectfully.
Yeah.
2.1.
And then as you're working with students and they're sharing more, that's one of the major soft skills that now companies are going to be looking for, and they're going to work more collaboratively as they go into work and into school. So what are some elements you see, what are the strengths you see with your students that you have, and then what are some of the areas that you want to help develop in your students?
Well, some of the strengths, which I think are very important in society today, compassion, which there's moments where students recognize there's laughable moments, and then there's other times where they realize that this is a very serious moment and I've got to show my respect. So taking that into account, I think that's a strength of theirs, certainly. Meeting academic requirements along the way. So while they're synthesizing into this piece, they're going to be aware of the MLA, in-text citations and citing sources, and the punctuation that goes with the dialogue, and making sure they are aware of narration, and so on and so forth. So all the academic terms will be highlighted and taught, and then accentuated from what they already know.
Okay. And so in your inquiry, could you walk me through to see how you're going to build capacity in you to help build capacity in your students? So if you could walk me through your IIP, please.
Yeah, so my focus question says, what instructional strategies or standards-based lessons, that's the big thing, and activities will assist in promoting social development and responsibility within a caring community where each student is treated respectfully. So what I was asking is that if you could help me monitor how I take or assess how I encourage the students to take the information and then make use of that, and a sequence of building upon it. I don't want them to take the information and go all the way to the end with it. I want to do it in bite-sized, manageable, reasonable chunks. So there's a sequence of lessons that make up this larger unit, from a autobiographical incident to a biography of a peer to a historical biography. So they will gradually build upon it. But I said I want to see students synthesize information acquired via interviews into an original griot. That's what this first one's going to look at. Which will be a group griot, and it's going to be very interesting. We'll see how it goes. It needs to be done within the appropriate context, so mood and tone are very important here, being sensitive of the issues that they're going to address, and taking that sensitivity and making sure that it's embedded within the appropriate context. it will be measurable based on the student feedback. And this is going to be a little tricky too, because I'm going to be comparing works that aren't the exact same. I'm going to compare their initial assessment, which I'll call the assessment, their first writing task, the autobiographical incident. I'm going to compare that to the last task, which will be the historical biography. And though there are some differences between the two, there's enough similarities to see the growth along the way. So I'm hoping I'm facilitating enough writing tasks so that as we go through it, we look at this, we can see the growth.
And the growth is going to be the growth in their compassion and their empathy for one another.
Right, and then transition that into the writing part where they're doing it in grammatically sound form, MLA, format and so on. So take the heart and merge it with the academic mind at the end of the lesson, ideally.
And so you have, so your focus is how can you build empathy and compassion into your classroom with your students and building that community, and you're seeing that the students have that already, but you want to strengthen some of the areas that you see that they may need strengthening. And so since you're going to focus on 2.1, let's look at where you are on the continuum and where would you want to go. So as we look at the elements on 2.1, which is creating and maintaining effective environments for student learning, where do you feel you are now?
I would have to be between exploring and applying, and primarily because this is a unique group. It's an academy where all the students will move through their classes together, and it's what would traditionally be considered a low-performing group. Since they'll be moving through their classes together, theoretically, through the next 4 years, the building of the relationship is so important. So we've already started to a degree, so I can confidently say we are exploring. We are starting to push towards the application process of it. As it says, students demonstrate effort to be positive, accepting, and respectful of differences. I can really say we're getting very close to the application process. But I hope that by the end of this unit, I'm very clearly in the integrating and innovating stages of it. So.
And also what you're teaching them are skills that are not just going to apply to your class. It's going to apply in all different classes as they work.
Exactly.
And so what do you want to see as evidence for you that you are moving from your exploring into applying and then thus into integrating?
I would really like to see the innovative lessons being more frequently rolled out in my classroom. I would like for it to be more often than it is now, which unfortunately, is maybe once every 2 weeks will I have an activity that really builds upon this. And so I realize now that I can do it far more often while still meeting the academic needs and requirements. So that would be the frequency of the lesson plans that are innovative and build upon the community, I think would be the measurable goal for me.
Yes. Okay. And then as I look at your action plan, your research, some of the places where you can look for other sources. I see some of our seminars, and you're going to go online to look for some information. Any other things that you can think of possibly for?
Visiting some colleagues and taking some ideas from them, it's invaluable, going into other people's rooms and seeing what they do and how they do it. And matter of fact, the first sheet you'll have here is an example of one activity, a tool that I'm going to start using. It's a partner appointment clock. So we had students set an appointment. They had obviously 12 slots to go around the classroom, and each student would find a partner for that time, and they would exchange names on that slot. Once they completed the task, we now have a tool for calling on them to get with a partner and collaborate and share. So at the end of a lesson, I can simply say, hey, you got 3 minutes, talk to your 4 o'clock appointment, go over this and report back. So then they've got 12 students that they can go ahead and interact with at any given time that you call on them. So this strategy's helped quite a bit in terms of building the relationships, having students interact and get together more often than they were before.
And also the classroom manage component, that grouping is very
and this is a great tool in terms of, ironically or coincidentally, it's a clock, and it saves time by having appointments already assigned. So that was one thing I picked up, from my research and my action plan. But also attending the ITQ poetry seminars, SES classes, they've also really offered quite a bit, and were instrumental in the development of the lessons that I'll be rolling out during this unit. So very influential as I pulled those together.
And I would also recommend that you look at our district. We have in 21st Century location on technology, they have one that is dealing with collaboration.
Okay.
So they may have some information on there that can help you come up with key ideas on building the collaboration in your teams, especially with your students. Okay. And see, application, we looked at that. Your strategy, you're looking at the grouping, that's good. And then you're developing your lesson plans, integrating the component of compassion and collaboration as you are building these lessons, having them and then having it measurable. Okay.